Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Yesterday, we were talking about foundation stone. For instance, when you build a monastery, when you help support a monastery, build a monastery or a church, the foundation stone, the corner, you might say, all the names of all the people that have ever contributed to that, their names are put in to the very foundation of the monastery, the church, and they are sung at every liturgy that will be carried forth until the end of time. It's something really wonderful. Well, the same thing happens in a sense when a person enters the Orthodox Church. First is, an inquirer, then they stay around a little while, then they become catechumens, and then after a period of time, they become Orthodox. And that time prior to becoming Orthodox is the time when we like to say spend time helping develop what will be your cornerstone, what will be that which will stand for you, what you will stand on, the very stone, the rock that Jesus Christ is, that very rock you'll be standing on for the rest of your life. It's like when you get married in the church. When you get married in the church, well, the two become one flesh. And when the two become one flesh, that is it. That's your life. There is no more looking around, checking out the internet, you've done all that. It's all over. You have that person. That person is the person that you're going to wake up next to every single day till you leave this world. And so that means, and I tell this to married couples, you have to relax a little bit. You have to realize that especially it is hard to get to know somebody else, even if you've known them for a couple of years. It's like you don't know them in the way of waking up next to them, cooking breakfast together, doing your laundry together, etc. You don't know them in that kind of practical way. And so we always tell people that Jesus Christ is the first person in the marriage, that very rock that marriage can stand on. So if he's the rock that you're standing on, then all these little trivial things that seem to get in the way, the little arguments and the little this and spats and you did this and you did that and and all that kind of stuff, you're not living with a roommate. You're living with a partner for life. There's someone who's going to do it. And so we tell people that they have to build their marriage on the rock of salvation, on Jesus Christ. And so the only way you can do that is if by practicing the Orthodox faith. So you want that stone, that rock, to be built on your willingness to follow the command. All right, Teddy. Chill out, buddy. It's all right. Anyway, to build that foundation through the commandments, through the following the commandments, through following the very thing we read in the second gospel reading, which was, the virtues. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. So then in today's gospel reading, he takes it a step further. You might say, he tells us it doesn't really matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter the kind of clothes you're wearing. You don't have to be caught up in all the sort of the muster of life that is constantly comparing and contrasting everyone to another person. If you're overweight, you want to get skinny. If you're skinny, you want to put on muscle. You want to put muscle. There's always this constant disassociation with, really, when you get up in the morning, look in the mirror and who are you? Who's that person? That's who you are. And more than that, that person inside, that person that you know, the person whose voice you speak, that's you. That's who you are from now until the end of time, beyond the end of time, from now until forever. So when you're trying to seek blessing, when you're trying to seek to build your castle on the, so to speak, your castle on the rock of salvation, it comes about through, of course, humility and praying without ceasing and standing in prayer constantly praying before God. Father Paisius, Abbot Paisius of St. Anthony Monastery, when Elder Ephraim died, he said that all of us have to pray harder now because he is one of the last remaining true elders in the world, Elder Ephraim. I mean, when you went to confession to Elder Ephraim, once you told him your name, he would tell you the rest. He would just say, well, you've done this, and you've done that, and you've done that as well, and you've done... And then he would tell you what your penance would be, and it could be really a little stiff at that, but nevertheless, you'd be grateful because you want nothing to come between you and God. And so, that kind of an elder, well, there aren't any anymore, probably not, but there are people who can pray. And so I'm telling you that we need to pray. Pray more than we've ever prayed before. Pray constantly. There's a couple different kinds of prayer that we can pray. One is, of course, like praying the prayers of the church, like Our Father who art in heaven, those kind of prayers. And then there are prayers when you're at home by yourself and you just, lift it up, God, lift it up, and praying for Ukraine and Russia and Serbia and Syria and Ethiopia and Los Angeles, by the way, and every place, any name that comes to mind that's a country in the world today, you should pray because there's probably something going on there that isn't helpful to the local population. And so it's important that we just develop this constant prayer life, and so we have things like the prayer ropes, which are really, really good. They're really helpful if you use them. If you use them, that's the thing. Are they just a bracelet or are they actually in use? And so for a lot of times, some of us, we walk around, people say, oh, isn't that a pretty bracelet? No, it's not a bracelet. It's actually something I pray on, and I go through every knot, and I pray that those knots are just to keep track of, to keep me from being unfocused as I'm in prayer. When you can't sleep at night, perfect time to get up and do what? Pray. Reading is a little tedious in the middle of the night, but praying, you can pray for anyone. You can get on your knees and pray. You can do prostrations. You can do anything that aligns your mind and your heart and your soul with the love of God. He tells us about the birds and how they don't spin or toil, but Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. If we spend all our time just simply making money and trying to be the next billionaire or whatever, I mean, maybe there's some virtue in that. I'm not sure, unless you can share it with other people. And that's the general idea. If you've got more than enough to eat and drink on any given day, maybe you should be sharing what it is you have with people who are less fortunate, instead of condemning the guys who stand at the freeway entrance over there. You bless them. Maybe you give them a little bit. Maybe you have just one time I had a fellow down on the 3rd Street Promenade come up to me and he said, Father, yes, and I knew I was coming. I knew it was coming. He says, I need a lunch. I said, okay. So we went in and he ordered lunch and I paid for it. Well, okay, great. The next time I was down on the 3rd Street Promenade with my kids. He said, Father, I'm back. He was homeless. I'm just going to say he was homeless. But so I bought him lunch. A couple times I bought him lunch. It didn't hurt me any. It wasn't. He was very sweet, very kind. You just don't know. In other words, these are the people that Christ calls us to bless and to pray over and to, but not just them, not just them. We have a lot of people that are severely mentally ill and or suffer from and suffer from addictions, drug, alcohol, sexual addictions, you name it, there's an addiction. And those people need our prayers as well. And for then our brothers and sisters who are serving time in prison, repenting for their sins, we have to pray for them as well. And the biggest thing is that we have to have faith in God. We have to believe that we are, in other words, that you're building your house upon the rock, the very rock. And it isn't to say Jesus is a rock. It's to say that the idea is that rocks are better than sand. And building your life and all that on sand is fruitless, because when the first big wave comes, it's going to knock your house down, and you won't be able to stand, and you'll be washed out. And that's the point of not being on the sand, but being on the rock. And the point of, if your eye be clear, if your eye be single, if your eye be on the things that are necessary, then your eye will be on that which is good, and then that goodness will lead you to greater goodness. But if your eye is on just you and the accumulation of the things that make you happy, that make you comfortable, that make you feel great in life, oh yes, well I need another tennis racket because, well, this one is getting a little old. I think I need a new one. It's going to give me better return on my ball, but it won't give you better return on. He tells us in another area. He tells the apostles, if you have 2 coats, give one away. If you have extra shoes, give them away. He's always constantly giving away. And it's one thing to say that he said it to do it. But then we have people like St. John of Kronstadt who built an entire house of industry on one thing, and that was feeding the poor, the needy, and the suffering, and building a place for them where they could get rehabilitated, in a sense, that they could learn a new skill, and they could have what was necessary for them, and they would build successful lives and become saintly men and women themselves. And he did this in one of the worst areas of St. Petersburg. It's called Kronstadt, which was a naval port, and now it's just a naval port. But then it had lots and lots of homeless people, kind of like going to Venice Beach. Kind of like Venice Beach. You have a lot of really broken, addicted, drug addicted people who should be on medication but can't afford medication, whatever it is. You have a lot of people down there that have great need, and they're just kind of, we see them, they're smelly, they look unkempt, their hair's all disheveled. Well, in that person you find Christ. In that person you find Christ. Even if he doesn't look like Christ, even if you don't think he sounds like Christ, you find Christ in him and serve Christ in him. That's what people like St. Martin of Tours did when he took care of the old man who was frozen, almost frozen on the side of the road. He wrapped him in his cloak and took him to an inn and put him in the inn and made him warm. And then later that night, Christ appeared to him and said, "As much as you've done it to the least of my brethren, you've done it to me." You have no need to worry about how much you have in the bank. You need not to worry about if you have the greatest new fashion since in Paris or something. What you need to be concerned with is that which Christ places before you in all things. So may God give each of us the strength to do his will in all things, to pray for all the countries of the world, all of them, and anyone you can remember. Pray for any person that comes to mind when you're praying. Pray for that person first, and pray for them continually. And for any person, any situation, we had the other day, we had someone, Joseph, came running in. He came running into the bookstore. He says, "Are you all right, Father? Are you okay?" I go, "Yeah, I'm good. Why?" he says, well, this man just shot a police officer in Santa Monica, and he was running toward the bookstore. I said, well, that's quite a distance. It's 2 miles, by the way. And and I said, well, he didn't make it this far, I think. I think they got him before he came here. Well, I was worried, and I was ready to come and stand guard here at the door, he said. And I said, well, thank you very much for thinking of me and thinking of the church and thinking of, it'd be a bummer if it was something, possibly if something happened. But nevertheless, he came running. He was, feeling, and I said, more importantly to this, to pray for that man who shot the police officer, because now he's in big trouble. He's in more trouble than he ever thought of being. And whenever he was frustrated about whatever was going on in him, we can pray for him and for the police officer who got shot. And so, in other words, it's easy to pray for them that love you, but to pray for them that hate you, despise you, that's even harder. So may God give you the strength. Glory to Jesus Christ.